Welcome to the 8th episode of Pride and Prejudice, the podcast that breaks barriers and challenges stereotypes. Happy Pride Month! This month is extremely special for some people, as it marked a huge stepping stone for the LGBTQ community in 1969. But before the Stonewall riots, there had already been an extensive history in the LGBTQ community, which has been obscured over and over and only discovered recently. In this episode, I will be covering the Stonewall riots and much, much more. There are a couple of very famous LGBT people across history, like drag queen Marsha B. Johnson, Miss Major, and drag king Storm DeLavier, known for leading the Stonewall riots, and Gilbert Baker, the creator of the original LGBTQ+ flag. But what about the people that history has forgotten? What about the people who were recently discovered to have been LGBT? Many people that have been seen as LGBT in history have been Roman or Greek. For instance, the Roman Emperor Hadrian was the Emperor of Rome from 117 AD to 138 AD, and did in fact have a wife, Vibia Sabina. Hadrian was said to have been unhappy in his marriage with Vibia, and still showed his affections for a young man, Antinous. He was said to have been a favorite lover of Hadrian, being constantly shown affection from him, but Antinous only died at 19 or 20 years old. Roman Emperor Trajan was also said to have had a fondness for men, although this is mainly speculation. Speaking of the Roman age, being bisexual was extremely common. The Romans had a much more fluid view of sexuality than most people have now, allowing men and women alike to love the same gender. The women also took more of a leading role in the Roman times when their husbands went to war, since the men were unable to be there to teach their children. Roman women could also own land, write their wills, appear in court, be midwives, priestesses, and much, much more. In Greek mythology, Zeus was known to have only one male lover, Ganymede. He was immortal, but Zeus was so awestruck by him that he took him, made him immortal to serve as his cupbearer and lover. Over time, being gay, lesbian, or even bisexual became highly frowned upon, so much so that one could have gone to jail for it. So many people had to hide themselves from the world, forcing themselves to at least tolerate being with the other gender so as to not have been hurt or shunned by family, friends, and society. This still happens today as it did in the 60s. At the beginning of the 60s, LGBTQ rights were drastically different compared to how they were at the end of the decade. The police would cause non-stop riots at gay bars, shouting profanities, taking wallets, and forcing people outside of the bar for relatively no reason. There's a video that came out almost 5 years ago that covers this topic much better than I can here. You can check it out in the resources I list above my podcast. LGBT people went to these gay clubs so they wouldn't have to be discriminated against, so they could freely socialize with people without fear of being shunned. People got hurt because of this. But on June 28, 1969, everything changed. The Stonewall Inn, located in Greenwich Village in New York City, was a type of private bottle bar and did not need a liquor license because patrons had to bring their own liquor. There are multiple mafias that profited off the wealthier patrons who wanted their sexuality to be kept secret. Despite all of this, it became an important institution. It allowed drag queens and kings who received a harsh reception at other gay bars and was a home to homeless gay youths and runaways. It was one of the last few gay bars that allowed dancing. Corrupt cops tipped off mafia-run bars about an incoming raid, allowing them to hide any illegal activity or liquor. In the early hours of June 28, 1969, there was a raid by the police at the Stonewall Inn, which came as a surprise to many people in the club. Police raided the bar, armed with a warrant, hurt patrons, and found bootleg alcohol. Female officers took other patrons suspected of cross-dressing into the bathroom to check their gender. Patrons were fed up with the treatment they had to deal with and became more and more agitated as the aggression continued. At one point, an officer hit one lesbian patron over the head, and she shouted at onlookers to act. This made the people start throwing pennies, bottles, and rocks at the police officers. Before long, a full-blown riot had begun. Hundreds of people were rioting against the police, and they, along with a few patrons they had taken and a Village Voice writer, barricaded themselves inside the bar, which the mob attempted to set on fire after breaching the barricade. The fire was put out, but this started 5 days of protesting that led to a significant positive change. The Stonewall riots were the catalyst that woke the public up to the mistreatment that LGBT people face on a daily basis, and was the moment people decided to stand up against it. Due to this, it led to multiple gay and human rights organizations, such as the Gay Liberation Front, the Human Rights Campaign, GLAAD, and PFLAG. These are all important and well-known LGBT and human rights groups. The history of the LGBTQ+ community is extensive, and I definitely cannot fit all of it here. It's important to learn about this, and if not all of it, at least some of it, to understand the struggle the LGBTQ community has faced and the ways the community rose up against it just to have the same rights as any human would have. If you enjoyed this episode of Pride and Prejudice, please share it with friends, family, or anyone who could benefit from this conversation. Let's spread the word and make our voices heard. Until then, remember that it's not just about breaking barriers, it's about creating a world where everyone's story is heard and celebrated. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep challenging the stereotypes. Thank you for listening to these 8 episodes, and I hope that you have an amazing rest of your year and an amazing last few weeks before summer. This is Allison Vasquez signing off for the last time, reminding you that every story matters.